Then he sat up suddenly. "There's a boy just coming down from your offices, Maxwell. It's the night watchman's boy, isn't it? Run across and head him, Starbuck. I believe that's a telegram he has in his hand." Starbuck swung himself over the railing and caught the lad before he could disappear in the street throngs. "You were plumb right," he said, when he came back to take his place on the porch. "He did have a message. It's for Dick. Here you are." Maxwell tore the envelope across and held the telegram up to the ceiling light. "Here's news," he announced. "It's from our man at Engels. He says, 'Jennings's force disbanded, and most of it gone east on limited. Been shipping teams and outfit all afternoon. Too busy to wire sooner.'" The superintendent crumbled the telegram and smote fist into palm. "Bully for you, Sprague," he exulted. "You pushed the right button just right. Jennings couldn't stand the pressure. He's given up the job and quit." There was no answering enthusiasm on the part of the big man, who rose suddenly out of his chair and reached for the telegram. Quite the contrary, the hand which took the crumpled bit of paper was trembling a little. "Dick," he began, in his deepest chest tone, "you hike over to the dispatcher's office on the dead run and have Connolly clear for that special train. Don't lose a minute. Starbuck, it's up to you to find Smith, Tarbell, Williams, Colonel Baldwin, and 2 or 3 more good men whom you can trust. Trust absolutely, mind you. Herd your crowd at the station in the quickest possible time. And you, Maxwell, make it your first business to tell the agent at Engels that there's a special train coming over the road. Don't tell him its destination. Just say it will leave Brewster going east in a few minutes. Don't slip up on that. It may mean a dozen human lives. Get busy, both of you." After he was left alone, Sprague shouldered a path through the crowd in the lobby and had himself lifted to his rooms. When he came down a few minutes later, he had changed his business clothes for the field rig which he wore on his soil-collecting expeditions. He had scarcely worked his way through the throng to the comparative freedom of the porch when Maxwell came hurrying across from the railroad building. "Bad luck," said the superintendent, with brittle emphasis. "There's a freight train off the Steel halfway between Corona and Timignani, this side of the canyon, and the track is blocked." "And we can't get by. There's nothing on the other side of the wreck that you could order down to meet us at the block?"
"Nothing nearer than Engels. There is an eastbound freight held there, loading the last of Jennings's outfit. To order the engine back from that would add at least an hour and a half to the 2-hour 50-minute running schedule I gave you the other day."
Sprague swore, out of a full heart, which, since he was the least profane of men, was an accurate measure of his growing disquietude.
"That's on me," he grated. "I had it all figured out to the 10th decimal place, and I didn't put in the factor of chance.
Dick, I want the biggest automobile in this town, and the one man among all your thousands who is least afraid to drive it."
Maxwell was able to answer without hesitation. "The car will be Colonel Baldwin's Big 6, with Starbuck for your reckless chauffeur. But I doubt if you can get over the range in anything that goes on wheels." Then he added, "What is it, Calvin? What have you figured out?"
Sprague ignored the anxious query and spoke only to the fact. "Can't get over the range. I tell you, we've got to get over the range. Good Lord, why in heaven's name doesn't Starbuck hurry?" Starbuck had hurried. He had looked to find most, if not all, of the men he had been told to summon, closeted in conference with Stillings. And his guess had gone true to the mark. Only Tarbell was missing, and him they picked up in front of the Tribune office, as they were hurrying to the rendezvous in the colonel's big touring car. Maxwell saw the car as it came under the corner electrics.
"There's a little luck, anyway," he exclaimed. "That is the colonel's car now, and Billy is driving it."
"Tools and arms. Half a dozen picks and shovels, and anything you can find that will shoot," commanded Sprague, vaulting the porch railing to the sidewalk as easily as Starbuck had vaulted it a little while before. "See to that part of the outfit yourself, Dick, while I'm looking after the human end of it." 1 minute afterward, the big man was standing beside the touring car which had been drawn up at the townside platform of the railroad building. Sprague shot the emergency at the 5 men in the car in bullet-like sentences. "Gentlemen, we've got to get over to the mesquite as quick as the Lord'll let us. The railroad is blocked, and it's an auto or nothing. Maxwell says we can't do it. I say we've got to do it. What do you say?"
"I reckon we can do it,"
drawled Starbuck, speaking for all. Then he turned to Smith, who was in the tonneau. "How about the tanks, Monty?" "I filled them tonight before we left the ranch," said the Highline treasurer. "Also, there's an extra gallon of oil aboard. We always carry it." "How about it, Colonel?" Sprague demanded of the erect, white-mustached old man in the back seat.
"Sure," was the quick reply. "You haven't told us yet whether it's a fight or frolic, but we're all with you either way, Mr. Sprague. Hop in, and we'll be jogging along."
It was at this moment that Maxwell, followed by a couple of yardmen, came up. The men were carrying the picks and shovels, which were hastily stowed in the car, and the superintendent handed over a small arsenal of weapons, 3 of them being sawed-off Winchesters.
"I had to raid the express office," he explained, "and I took what I could find."
Then to Sprague, who had mounted to the seat beside Starbuck,
"Don't you want me along?"
"No. You can do a great deal more good right here. Listen now, and follow my directions to the letter. Go upstairs to the wire and get in touch with your man at Angles. It will be your job to keep him in doubt as to what is on the road between his station and the lower end of the canyon. Lie to him if you have to. Tell him a part of the wrecked freight is on its way up the canyon or something of that sort, and keep him believing it as long as you possibly can. Don't fall down on it. Everything depends now upon the length of time you can keep some such story as that going over the wires." Starbuck had adjusted a pair of goggles to his eyes, and had his foot on the clutch pedal.
"All set?" he asked.
"Go," said Sprague, and at the word the big car shot away from the platform, rounded the end of the plaza, and bore away through the cross street to the eastward, gathering headway until, when the city limits were passed, its cut-out exhausts were blending in a deafening roar. Sprague was the only member of the party who had not at some time in the past had experience with Starbuck's driving. But before the first 10-mile lap on the Mesa Road had been covered, he, too, had had his initiation. There was a little lamp on the dash which poured its tiny ray on the dial of the speedometer. Sprague saw the index pointer go up to 35, jump to 40, crawl steadily onward until it had passed the 45 and was mounting to 50. After that he saw no more, for the simple reason that he was obliged to close his unprotected eyes against the hurricane-speed blast. The big man from Washington had asked for the fastest car in Brewster and for a man who was not afraid to drive it. He had got both. At the same time, alarming as the pace might seem, Starbuck was not taking any needless chances. He knew his road, and knew also that there were many miles of it among the mountains that would have to be taken at slower speed. Nonetheless, when the long mesa stretch was covered, and the big car was making zigzags up the precipitous slopes of Mount Cornell to reach the gap called Navajo Notch, the pace was still terrific, and the sober-faced driver was leaning over his wheel and pushing the motor like a true speed maniac. There was an hour of this risky zigzagging, and then the pass, lying cold and grim in the half-moonlight at altitude 10,000 feet, was reached and threaded. Following the summit gaining came the down-mountain rush on the eastern slope, and again Sprague closed his eyes, confessing inwardly that the steadiest nerve may have its limitations. With precipices shooting skyward on the right, and plunging sheer to unknown depths on the left, and with a man at the wheel who had apparently hypnotized himself until he had become a mere machine driving a machine. When Sprague opened his eyes, the great car was once more on an even keel, and its wheels were spurning the hard red sand of the desert. In the far distance ahead, a light was twinkling, the lamp in the station office at Angles. Sprague spoke to the iron-nerved driver at his side. "Hold on, Billy. Can you make the remainder of the run without the lamps?" Starbuck brought the big machine to a stand, and leaned over and extinguished the lights. A little later, under Sprague's directions, he was making a silent circuit of the town, with the muffler in, and the engine speeded at its quietest. Since it was far past midnight, the better part of Angles was abed and asleep, with lights showing only at the railroad station and in Pete Grimm's dance hall, where, arguing from the row of hitched horses, a roundup of red desert cowboys made merry. Sprague stopped the car with a sign to Starbuck and turned to Tarbell. "Get out, Archer, and make a quick run over to the station. I want to know what's going on in Disbrow's office." Tarbell made the reconnaissance and was back in a few minutes.